Hello, hello all. Hey, thanks for coming to my channel. Look, I get this dilemma on you get a texture wall, okay? And what happens is, over time, people patch cracks and stuff, and when they patch them, the patch never looks like the wall. Like you can tell, like when you walk into a wall and you say, oh, well, there's the patch. And it's like, well, the patch is almost as bad as the crack that was there. Matter of fact, you probably saw the crack less than the patch, because when you patch it, it has to be done a certain way or else it don't work. Now this wall here, I did this whole wall, resprayed it with texture. Okay, I got the hopper and the compressor, all that. And there's a video on that too, on the hopper. What happens is, I always do this. I try to take the shortcut and I load up the texture hopper and I just kind of power it on to where, you know, the patch marks are. And it never works. But I still try it every time. So it's because it is a little bit of, you know, finesse to get that out. Let's liken it to this. When I was in landscaping, there was a college campus that we did, and somebody sprayed weed killer on the side of the mountain, and it said F you, okay? So we come in, I send my guys out, and you know, they scratch it up, put in new grass seed. Well, you know, they didn't do it in a square or anything. They just, you know, scratched up, you know, inside the part that the weed killer had affected, and they planted grass seed. When we come back a week or two later, and in nice fresh green letters, it's the same thing. So basically, we didn't solve the problem, we just made it worse. So that's what's happening here. If you don't do the right technique, okay, what I did was, now I'm taking the part that's affected, which is about 2 feet wide here. Okay, all this area was patched like 10 times. So it was just bumpy and everything else. And you walk in and you can see it immediately. So I decided to do a video on how you do it properly, or how I do it, and it makes it look a lot better. Okay, so what I did was, you get your spackle real thin, you know, almost like water, real thin, not like oatmeal, but you know. And then you take and you skim coat the whole thing where it's affected. Okay, this is a 2 foot wide area. I'm not going to skim coat this whole wall because I already textured it twice. So what you're going to do is just skim coat the area that's affected. Okay, and after you skim coat it, you can't even sand it, because even the littlest line that you see will show up. It's amazing. So what I normally do is, I take a bucket with water with a sponge, and you have to do this. You have to do this before you put primer on or anything. Now what you're going to do is take your edges and you're going to rub your sponge, and actually rub the edge off with a wet sponge so you don't see any edge at all. Okay? You're going to rub it on here and lose that edge. Okay? Where it meets in with the texture. Just do that edge and get rid of your edge. Okay? And you may have to do this 2-3 times. Okay? Because once it dries, you'll see maybe a little edge shows up again that you didn't see when it was wet. So you got to get that edge off of there, totally. So you just see a fine transition from the textured part to the flat part. Okay? So you're going to keep doing this when your sponge stops being effective, because it will get so much spackle dust in it, you're going to wash it out and continue. You're going to get rid of these edges right on the transition part. You know, in some of these areas the edge is worse than others, but you just want to have a fine transition, okay? And then take your sanding block and do the center, and make sure it's all pretty flat, because when I go over it with the texture, I'm going to just worry about making this 2-foot area the same as the rest of the wall. So you want to start out with a pretty flat surface, because a fallacy that I learned years ago was they use texture to cover up blemishes. Well, guess what? If you got a blemish there, you put texture on it, it's just going to be worse. So they do not use texture to cover the blemishes or to make it easier. Texture is just another way of finishing your wall. So get out of the, throw that out the window. It's not to cover up blemishes. So you actually want your final wall to look nice and flat. And also tie in the sponged areas. Like I said, you can't just use the sponge because it doesn't get knocked down this area. You've got to use the sponge, wet sponge on the edges, and make a nice transition. Then take your sponge or take your sanding pad and finish it up. And now I'll do this, let it dry. I'll probably go over it another time with the sponge on the edges, and then use my sanding block. Make sure it's all nice and smooth. Transition on the edges, no edge on it. It just transitions right into the smooth area. And then I'll load up my hopper and I'll spray this again. That's all for now, guys. I just wanted to go over this fixing texture, because I run into it all the time where guys have tried to fix it and you walk in and it, you can see it right away. There's a problem spot, there's a problem spot. So if you follow this procedure, then you should work out pretty good. And the first time you do it, you may still see a little edge on there. So every time you do it, you get better at it, right? Thanks for coming. And share the video, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Mr. Fix It, I'm out.